The moment my wife smirked and said, "Let's switch lives for a week," I felt something cold settle in my chest, not anger, not shock, but certainty. I nodded, agreed, and watched her confidence sharpen, because I already knew something she didn't. Before I tell you how that single sentence unraveled everything she believed about me, do me a small favor, subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Stories like this only matter if they're heard, and this one changed my marriage forever. My name is Evan Cole, I'm 29 years old, and I make my living installing commercial heating and cooling systems across Redwood Valley. That means ladders before sunrise, rooftops that feel like ovens by mid-morning, crawl spaces packed with fiberglass and filth, and machines so heavy they make your spine ache long after you drop them. It's not glamorous. It doesn't happen behind a screen. And for a long time, my wife didn't think it counted as real work. Lila, my wife, works remotely as a brand strategist. Calls, deadlines, presentations, Slack messages that never stop buzzing. I never said her job was easy. But over time, her comments sharpened. Little things at first. Must be nice to clock out and forget about work. At least you don't have to think all day. Every time I came home exhausted, sore, dirty, she acted like I was exaggerating. Like my tiredness was inconvenient. That Tuesday night, when she suggested the role swap, I saw it clearly in her eyes. She didn't want understanding. She wanted proof that I wasn't lazy. That I wasn't weak. That I didn't have it easier than her. So I said yes. The rules were simple. 1 full week. I'd take her work-from-home routine. She'd come to the job sites with my crew. My supervisor, Mark Reyes, laughed when I explained it but agreed. He said, "She'll see by lunch." Lila packed snacks like it was a field trip. Bought brand new boots. Kissed me goodbye at 5:30 in the morning with a smile that said she was about to win something. I watched her drive off, then sat at her desk and opened her laptop. Her calendar was full, but manageable. Meetings with clients. Strategy docs. Emails. I worked through them steadily. No roof. No heat. No equipment digging into my shoulders. By the time she got home that first night, I was showered, relaxed, and cooking dinner. She walked in and froze. Her face was flushed. Hair plastered to her forehead. Hands scraped and dusty. She didn't say a word, just stared at me like she couldn't reconcile what she was seeing. When I asked how her day went, she muttered, harder than I thought, and disappeared into the shower. She came out 20 minutes later moving slowly, like every muscle was protesting. She barely touched her food. Finally, she said, "I didn't expect it to be that intense." I nodded. First day always is. She went to bed before 9. Day 2 broke the illusion. I got a text just before noon. "I can't do this." I didn't reply. 20 minutes later, she called. I let it ring. When she came home, she was crying, real crying. She collapsed onto the couch and told me everything. The heat. The fear of the roof. The weight of the equipment. How fast the crew moved. How stupid she felt trying to keep up. She said she wanted sympathy. I felt some. But I also felt something else, something sharp and quiet that had been building for months. She begged to stop the experiment. Said she understood now. Said we didn't need to finish the week. I shook my head. "You wanted 7 days." Her face twisted. "You're being cruel." Maybe I was. But she had spent months treating my exhaustion like an inconvenience. This wasn't cruelty. This was reality, one she demanded to see. She slammed the bedroom door that night. I slept on the couch, answering her client emails with the same calm I used every day on the job. The next morning, she left without a word. Day 3, she didn't even make it to the site on time. She sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped in bandages, staring at nothing. "I can't go back," she said. I told her she had to. She screamed. Called me heartless. Said I was enjoying this. That I'd turned into her enemy. I stayed calm and reminded her that this was her idea. That she accused me of exaggerating. That she dismissed what I did every single day. She broke down again, but this time, something was different. This wasn't just exhaustion. This was understanding crashing into belief. She left anyway. Mark called later. Said she was trying but struggling. Asked if he should send her home. I told him no. When she came back that night, she went straight to bed. No tears. No anger. Just silence. And sitting alone in the quiet, I realized something I hadn't admitted before. This was never about proving who worked harder. It was about being seen. Day 3 didn't end when she went to bed. I could hear her moving around in the bedroom long after the lights were off. She wasn't crying anymore. That scared me more than the tears. Silence meant something inside her was rearranging itself. The next morning, she woke before the alarm. I noticed it right away. Lila moved slower now. More deliberate. She didn't put on the confident face she'd worn the first day. No smirk. No comments. She dressed quietly, hands still wrapped, shoulders stiff, jaw set like someone bracing for impact. She paused at the door. "I don't know how you do this every day," she said, not looking at me. I didn't answer. Not because I was angry, but because anything I said would soften the lesson before it finished landing. When she left, I sat down at her desk again. Her work had piled up overnight, messages marked urgent, calendar reminders stacked back to back. I handled them one by one. I didn't rush, didn't panic. I realized something uncomfortable then. I wasn't struggling. Tired, yes. Mentally engaged, sure. But nothing like the way my body felt after a 10-hour install in August heat. That contrast mattered. Around midday, I stepped outside to take a call and noticed how calm my breathing was. No ache in my knees. No raw scrape in my throat from fiberglass dust. No buzzing headache from dehydration. I'd lived so long in physical exhaustion that this version of work felt strangely gentle by comparison. The call ended. My phone buzzed again. It was Mark. "She's still here," he said. "Credit for that. But she's pushing past what she should." I asked what he meant. "She won't ask for help," he said. "Tries to muscle through things she shouldn't. Pride, maybe." That didn't surprise me. Lila hated looking weak. Hated admitting limits. She'd accused me of laziness because the alternative, that my job genuinely took more out of me than hers, was harder for her to accept. When she came home that evening, she didn't go to the bedroom. She sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't even poured anything into. "I messed up," she said quietly. I waited. "I thought being tired meant being overwhelmed mentally," she continued. "Deadlines. Pressure. Responsibility. I didn't realize how much of what you deal with is your body screaming at you all day long." I nodded once. She looked up at me then, eyes rimmed red but steady. "Why didn't you ever say something?" The question stung. "I did," I replied. "You just didn't hear it." She flinched, not defensively, but like the truth landed exactly where it was supposed to. That night, she didn't ask to stop the experiment. She didn't argue. She just went to bed early again, setting her alarm without comment. Day 4 was different. She came home with dirt under her nails and exhaustion etched into her face, but also something new. Respect. Not for the job itself, but for the endurance it demanded. She told me about the crew. How they moved almost without speaking. How everyone watched out for each other because one mistake could mean someone getting hurt. How Mark corrected her firmly but fairly, never mocking her, never lowering expectations. "He treats you like you're capable," she said. "Even when it's hard." I almost laughed. "That's the job," I said. "No one lowers the bar." She nodded slowly. "I lowered it for you." That was the moment I felt something loosen in my chest. Not forgiveness. Understanding. Later that night, she asked me questions she'd never asked before. About how long I'd been doing this. About injuries I'd worked through. About days I came home too tired to talk. She listened. Really listened. But I didn't stop the experiment. Day 5 arrived like a quiet truce. No tension. No accusations. Just fatigue and honesty sitting between us. She admitted she'd spent lunch talking to one of the older guys on the crew, a man named Ray, who'd been doing this kind of work longer than either of us had been alive. He told her about coworkers who'd burned out, about surgeries, about knees and backs that never fully healed. He said the ones who last don't complain, she told me. They just carry it. I shrugged. Complaining doesn't make the job lighter. She swallowed hard at that. That night, she apologized again, but differently this time. Not rushed. Not emotional. Just clear. "I didn't respect what you do," she said. "And that's on me." I accepted the apology. But I didn't end the week early. Because apologies matter less than change. Day 6 tested her more than any other. Her body was exhausted now. Bruises bloomed along her arms. Her hands trembled slightly when she reached for things. But she still got up. Still went. Still finished. When she came home, she didn't collapse. She sat beside me on the couch and leaned her head against my shoulder. "I see you," she said. 2 words. Heavy ones. For the first time in months, I believed her. But the real shift hadn't happened yet. That came on the final day, when the experiment ended, and we had to decide what we were going to do with everything we'd uncovered. The final day didn't arrive with drama. No arguments. No raised voices. Just a quiet heaviness that sat between us from the moment we woke up. Lila moved carefully that morning, like someone who had learned respect for gravity. She winced when she lifted her arms to pull on her jacket. Her fingers were swollen, knuckles bruised. She caught me looking and didn't joke about it this time. "I'm sore in places I didn't know existed," she said quietly. I nodded. "That's normal." She paused, then gave a small, almost humorless smile. "That's terrifying." She went to the job site one last time. Not because I forced her. Not because of pride. But because she wanted to finish what she started. That mattered. I spent the day wrapping up her remaining work. By now, I understood her systems, her habits, the mental load she carried. It wasn't easy, but it was predictable. Structured. There was a rhythm to it that made stress manageable if you respected it. My job didn't work that way. You couldn't plan for a unit slipping. For heat turning brutal by noon. For a misstep on a ladder. For a mistake that could hurt someone. That constant physical vigilance never turned off. And now she knew that. When she came home that evening, she didn't head for the bedroom or the shower. She dropped her bag by the door and stood there for a long moment, like she didn't know where to put herself anymore. "It's done," she said. We sat at the table again. Same place. Different air. She spoke first. "I thought switching roles would prove something," she said. "I thought I'd show you that I understood stress better than you did. That what I carried mattered more because it was mental." She swallowed. I was wrong. I stayed quiet. Not cold. Just present. She leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes locked on mine. "I didn't just underestimate your job. I underestimated you." That one landed harder than anything else she'd said all week. She continued, voice steady but fragile. "I thought exhaustion looked one way. I thought because you weren't constantly talking about deadlines or clients, you weren't carrying pressure. I never saw how much of yourself you left at work every day." I exhaled slowly. "I didn't need you to compete," I said. "I needed you to believe me." Tears welled up then, not the overwhelmed kind, not the frustrated kind. The honest kind. The kind that came when someone finally saw the damage they'd caused. "I do now," she said. "And I hate that it took this." We talked for hours that night. Not fighting. Not defending. Just laying everything out. I told her how invisible I'd felt. How many nights I came home already empty and felt guilty for needing rest. How often I swallowed resentment because I didn't want to sound weak. How every dismissive comment chipped away at me until I started believing maybe I was exaggerating after all. She listened without interrupting. She told me how her own stress had blinded her. How she measured worth by mental load because that was the only language she understood. How she never meant to belittle me, but impact didn't care about intention. We didn't fix everything that night. But we stopped pretending. The days after the experiment felt strange. Familiar routines, new awareness. She went back to her desk. I went back to my job. But something fundamental had shifted. She started asking real questions about my day. Not polite check-ins. Specific ones. What kind of install? How heavy were the units? Who was on the crew? Was it a long one? When I came home exhausted, she didn't sigh. She didn't roll her eyes. She didn't make it about her stress competing with mine. She made space. One evening, about a week later, I came home with my back screaming after a brutal day. I dropped onto the couch without a word. She didn't ask me to help with dinner. She brought me a glass of water and said, "Sit. I've got it." That small act hit harder than any apology. Another night, her friends came over. One of them asked what I did for work. Before I could answer, Lila spoke. "He installs commercial HVAC systems," she said. "Climbs roofs. Hauls equipment. Keeps entire buildings running. It's brutal work." Her tone wasn't defensive or performative. It was proud. I felt something loosen in my chest I hadn't realized was still tight. Weeks passed. The changes stuck. She stopped comparing our jobs. Stopped framing stress as a competition. Stopped treating my exhaustion like an inconvenience. And I stopped feeling like I had to prove my worth through endurance alone. We still argued sometimes. Still misunderstood each other occasionally. But the foundation was different now. There was respect where dismissal used to live. One night, as we lay in bed, she turned to me and said quietly, "I don't ever want to be the reason you feel small again." I believed her. Not because of her words, but because of what she'd lived. She couldn't handle 2 days of my reality. That truth humbled her. And it reminded me of something important too: being seen shouldn't require breaking yourself first. The experiment didn't just change how she looked at me. It changed how I looked at myself. I stopped minimizing my own exhaustion. Stopped apologizing for being tired. Stopped measuring my worth against someone else's definition of hard. I carried weight. And now, finally, someone else saw it too. The real test didn't come during the week we switched roles. It came afterward, when everything went back to normal and we had to decide whether the lessons would stay or fade. The first month told me everything I needed to know. Lila didn't just act differently when she remembered. She acted differently when she didn't think about it at all. The change had settled into her instincts. When I came home late, she didn't ask why before asking if I was okay. When I sat quietly at the table, she didn't assume I was distant. She understood that sometimes exhaustion isn't loud. Sometimes it just sits. She started planning around my recovery, not just her schedule. Dinners that could wait. Weekends that didn't demand social energy I didn't have. Space where rest was allowed without guilt. That mattered more than any apology. I noticed it in smaller moments too. She'd watch me stretch my shoulders before bed and quietly bring ice without being asked. She'd remind me to hydrate. She'd insist I take a day off when my body clearly needed it, even when I said I could push through. "You already pushed through enough," she'd say. Those words healed something I didn't know how to name. One evening, about 6 weeks later, we ran into Mark at the store. He laughed when he saw Lila's hands, still faintly marked from that week. "She survive?" he asked. Lila smiled, but it wasn't playful. It was honest. "I didn't," she said. "I learned." Mark glanced at me and nodded, like he understood something without it needing explanation. That night, after we got home, Lila admitted something she'd never said out loud before. "I was scared," she said. "Not of your job. Of what it meant." I asked her what she meant. She took a breath. "If your work was really that hard, then I'd been wrong about you. About us. About how much you carried alone." She looked down. "And admitting that meant admitting I failed you." The vulnerability in her voice stopped me cold. "I didn't need perfection," I said. "I needed partnership." She nodded. "I know. And I'm here now." She proved it again and again. When her friends complained about their partners being tired or disengaged, she didn't join in. She pushed back. "Maybe they're just exhausted," she'd say. "Not lazy." I'd hear it from the other room and feel something steady settle inside me. She wasn't just changing for me. She was changing how she saw the world. And I was changing too. I stopped hiding how tired I was. Stopped pretending I could always handle more. Stopped measuring my worth by how much pain I could absorb without complaint. When I needed help, I asked. When I needed rest, I took it. That week taught both of us something uncomfortable but necessary: love doesn't survive on assumptions. It survives on understanding. Months later, she brought up the role swap again, not as a challenge, but as a reference. "I can't believe how sure I was," she said one night, shaking her head. "I really thought I knew." I squeezed her hand. "You know now." She smiled softly. "I do." We never switched roles again. We didn't need to. The experiment wasn't about proving one job was harder than the other. It was about learning that different kinds of work demand different kinds of strength, and dismissing one doesn't elevate the other. It nearly broke us. Instead, it rebuilt us on something stronger. Respect. Understanding. Seeing each other clearly. She once thought my exhaustion was exaggeration. Now she sees it as effort. She once thought my job was simple. Now she sees the cost. And I no longer feel invisible in my own life. That week didn't just change her. It changed how we stood beside each other. And that's what made all the difference. Before you go, let me know you were here. Comment where you're watching from and what part of this story stayed with you. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe. It truly helps more than you think.